There it is in all of its digital glory. Just about illegible, but it is there. It's kind of like an art piece. There are probably artists out there who get paid big bucks to make wobbly, semi-legible, digitized text like that and print it out on giant canvases to be sold at art galleries. Well, that's kind of it. Yeah, look at that. There's the address. Malcolm 10, P.O. Box 3626, Newtown, Connecticut 06470. A P.O. box that is always open to receiving art. Kind of like what I just talked about a second ago. Weird digital blurry stuff. Well, enough of that. Why don't we kind of just get rid of that, now that it has come into focus, and reveal the man behind the address. Me, Malcolm Tent from Danbury, Connecticut. Welcome aboard, everybody. Good to have you guys here on this week's episode of Tent Talks Tunes. A very odd and arcane and strange topic today. Something I never thought I would actually talk about. Ms. Gelman knows exactly what I'm talking about when I say that I didn't think I'd be talking about what I'm talking about. What I'm talking about is one of my least favorite formats for music storage and conveyance ever. I, of course, refer to the compact disc, the CD. Oh, my God. But before we get into CDs, we're going to talk about the mail a little bit. Yeah, it's been a little bit of a slow mail week. I think probably because the last few times I've been on, I haven't really made the effort to talk about my lonely, empty mailbox, which is, of course, P.O. Box 3626, Newtown, Connecticut 06470. I've gotten a few things, though. For example, the latest issue of Bridge and Tunnel Crowd. You guys have heard me extol the virtues of this repeatedly. I just got this today. Bridge and Tunnel Crowd, a real-life print zine made on an offset press from New Haven, Connecticut, with an extremely bent sensibility and weird sense of humor. I love this kind of stuff. Always look forward to the latest issue of Bridge and Tunnel Crowd. So thank you, Bridge and Tunnel Crowd. I'll be studying this very carefully. Also, one that I actually got a while ago, but it kind of slipped through the cracks, a cassette from Raleigh, North Carolina, with one of the great band names of all time, Regurgistate. Haha. A split cassette between Regurgistate and The Inept. Don't know anything about it. Don't know who these people are, but it showed up in my mailbox, and I'm stoked to get a chance to listen to it. Looks pretty punk rock to me. One of the best things about this gig is the constant thrill of discovery. The band name Regurgistate reminds me of a Danbury, might have been Newtown punk rock band from the early 90s called the Alcatholics. Another classic band name. Alcatholics, if any of you Alcatholics are out there, I salute you. Also, and this is kind of germane to today's topic, a CD. Look at that, I got a CD in the mail. All the way from Scandinavia. And of course, being a resident of Danbury, Connecticut, I'm going to butcher the pronunciation of this entirely because the only English I speak is the President's English, and the only Scandinavian I speak is non-existent. So, Skogstokig. Skogstokig. If any pair, if you're out there and you're watching right now, pair from Sweden, please give us a phonetic pronunciation of this band's name, because I don't want to butcher their good name any more than I have to. But this is great stuff. I got a chance to listen to this a little bit. It's like early 80s pissed off, full of rage, lightning fast, standard tuning hardcore. That's the kind of hardcore I cut my teeth on. Maximum rock and roll, welcome to 1984 style hardcore and punk rock. Plenty of it in abundance on this one. So it's kind of the same deal. I don't know who these guys are, but they sent me a disc, and I'm glad they did. And they sent me a note. It's a handwritten note, which is pretty awesome. And the dude signed his name, and I don't know if it's just my cheap dollar store glasses, but I cannot read the guy's name. So I don't know your name. I can't pronounce the name of your band. I'm sorry, but I got it. It's here. I'm enjoying it very much. Thank you kindly. All right, that's the mail call for the day. Let's sink our teeth into today's topic, shall we? I was kind of triggered to talk about CDs because of like really weird circumstances lately. You know, I'm always talking about my Discogs and eBay store and my record label TPOS. For some strange reason, and this is one of those imponderables and one of those unfathomables, I've been selling a fair number of CDs lately. I don't know why, but all of a sudden people are kind of buying CDs. Usually I sell, I don't know, maybe 25 or 30 CDs a year, but I've probably sold 35 or so CDs in the past month or so. And you know, like really weird esoteric stuff on my label, like this one, Music to Kill Brain Cells, Volume 9. Music to Kill Brain Cells, Volume 3. I released both. I released this one in 1984, and I released this one in 1985. And just for giggles, just because the technology is there and because I can do it, I listed it. I listed both of these on Discogs and, you know, listed them as CDs just to see if anybody would ever be interested. Sure enough, somebody actually ordered them. And I had to go ahead and make CDs. I had to create CDs from scratch with cover art and everything. And it really got me to thinking about the transitory nature of formats and public buying habits and my own taste in formats and my own buying habits. It really made me think. It made me have to think deeply about these things. It was mildly traumatic, you know? It was kind of weird because I've got this very nicely feathered nest. It's wound up with mylar tape and vinyl and printed paper. It's all analog. You know, that's my comfort zone. That's where I do my nesting, is in the world of analog. But as we all know, CDs and digital media in general, I don't know if they're the 800-pound gorilla in the room anymore, but there's certainly at least a 100-pound gorilla in the room. And as long as you've got a 100-pound gorilla sitting in your room, you can't avoid it. You can't ignore it. I think by this time we know it's not going to go away. So just the fact that I had to custom make these CDs for the first time in 36 years really got me to thinking. And here's what I was thinking. I'm going to tell you what I was thinking. What I was thinking, deep thoughts. Deep thoughts. I was thinking about the reason why I have always, or at least traditionally, hated CDs. And anybody who knows me knows that I've spent a lot of time on my personal Jeremiah against CDs, starting in the late 80s and going up until the day that my record store was taken away from me by the evil, greedy, grease-cooking landlord in Danbury. Never liked CDs. Never. No, I sold plenty of them. Let's make no doubt about that. I mean, the customer is always right. And if the customer wants CDs, it is my duty to sell them CDs. It's my job. That's how I stay alive. That's how I buy cat food for Harry the cat, who, as usual, is peacefully asleep on the sofa to my right. And he hasn't stirred yet. But Harry's over there, and he's glad you're tuned in. Anyway, a retailer's got to do what a retailer's got to do. Simple reality. I remember the first CD I ever sold. It was at the original Trash American Style location at 20 Station Road in Brookfield, Connecticut by the Four Corners. I had to special order it, and it was very expensive. And it was the first Suicidal Tendencies album. And it wasn't the first CD I ever handled, but it was one of the very first. And I don't remember, it was probably something like $20 at the time, which in 1987 dollars was a lot of money to spend on a piece of music. Your average LP was retailing for about $8.50 at the time. And that gets right to the very crux of the matter regarding my intense dislike for CDs for the very longest time. CDs basically were put on the marketplace, and after a very short period of time, the consumer was offered no choice but to buy CDs. The major labels, and I can't foresee any time in my life when I will ever stop disliking the major labels. The major labels skewed the playing field and stacked the deck so heavily against vinyl and so much in favor of CDs that they almost made vinyl extinct. They didn't quite do it, but they came really close. They took a perfectly good, and as we know now, here in the 21st century, perfectly good and superior musical delivery method, and they tried to make it extinct, all so they could sell CDs at hyperinflated prices to the public. And how many times have I heard it happen, like when I go to tag sales, for example. I'll go to a tag sale, walking up the driveway and see all the stuff spread out. They've got all their George Foreman grilling machines, and they've got their treadmills, and they've got their exercise balls, and they've got their Christmas ornaments, and their old PlayStations, the usual tag sale garbage you see. And I always ask, hey, got any records? And they always say, at least 99 times out of 100, or actually let's make that 999 times out of 1,000, they say, oh, the records? Yeah, we got rid of all them when we switched over to CDs, just like everybody else did. And it happened a lot at the store. And I kind of liked it because people would bring in their record collections and trade them all in and replace them with CDs. That aspect of it I liked. But the entire cynicism with which it was done by the major labels made me want to vomit. And speaking from my vantage point from behind the counter, I can tell you exactly how the major labels went out of their way to eradicate vinyl. First, they shrank the number of titles available on LP considerably. Like they just stopped making them. They got it down to where it was only certain blockbuster titles and certain real niche titles that they would even bother pressing on vinyl, and usually in very small quantities, and with the quality shrinking rapidly. Like they stopped putting printed inner sleeves, they started using thinner cardstock, they were using cheaper, flimsier vinyl, and the price point never changed. In fact, it went up, if I recall correctly. So they started offering a flimsier, shittier version of vinyl, which was harder to get. Vinyl and product in general had always been fully returnable. Like if you ordered, say, 10 of the latest Skipping Flippies album and you only sold 7, you could return the other 3 for full credit. They made vinyl non-returnable. So they've made a crappier product with a much, much, much narrower selection, and they stuck you with it. Whereas CDs, they were, cranking out by the semi-truckload. Think about how many CDs fit into a semi-truck. 53 feet long and about 108 inches wide, filled with CDs. Think about that. That's a lot of damn CDs. And every single one of them was made on the cheap and sold on the expensive. List prices for CDs kept going up and up and up, even as manufacturing costs kept going down and down and down and down. Whereas vinyl was pretty much stagnant. So, because of the laws of supply and demand, the fact that you couldn't get very much in the way of good vinyl anymore, but CDs were abundant even at the hyperinflated prices. Obviously, if somebody wants to buy the latest CD by the Skipping Flippies because there's no vinyl, they're going to buy the CD, even if it is $23.99. And the labels loved it because it probably cost them 79 cents to make it. So that's the real life, ugly economic reality of why CDs ended up taking over the market, and if not making vinyl all the way extinct, pushing it way off to the side. I always salute the independent labels, the hardcore labels, the punk rock labels, for never giving up on vinyl, and for the few pressing plants in the U.S. and the few pressing plants abroad who stuck with it and didn't break up their pressing plants and send them over to Russia or East Europe. I commend them as well. I salute them. My favorite example of that was, and this is because I get this question all the time. People always ask, where can you make a flexi? Here in the 21st century, people want to know, where can you make a flexi? Where can you make a flexi disc? Because flexi discs are cool. They really are. They're really cool. I love them. I've made a few myself. Where can you get a flexi disc made? Well, the answer is you can't get one made in America anymore because the one manufacturer of flexi discs, Evitone in Clearwater, Florida, when digititis was at its height, they dismantled their manufacturing they dismantled their manufacturing facility for vinyl flexi discs and shipped them over to Eastern Europe somewhere. And they decided to put all of their money into digital duplication. Now, I don't know the exact span of time it took for them to go out of business, but it didn't take very long because they put all of their resources into CD duplication and I think maybe even cassette duplication. And well, gee whiz, I've got a CD burner back behind my behind my backdrop here. I've got a CD burner on my computer. And for a while, everybody had a CD burner on their computer. You could go to a specialized supply shop and buy a tower that would burn 10 CDs at once if you really wanted to, thus rendering Evitone obsolete. Whereas if they'd continued pressing flexis, I mean, I can't say they would be in business for sure, but the odds are probably a lot better. I know that I'd be ordering flexis right now. Because as it is, to order a flexi disc from Europe, it costs now about the same as a 7-inch single. So there's really no incentive to do a flexi, at least for me anyway. So that's the background on my intense dislike for CDs. Not to mention the fact that they are, in spite of the way they were sold and marketed to the public, very fragile. They don't last forever. And digital sound, as we all know now abundantly well, will never, ever, ever be as good as analog sound. It just won't be. Yes, CDs are convenient. Yes, digital files are instantaneous. But they don't beat vinyl. They don't beat tape. Them's the facts, kids. Let's have a toast to the facts, shall we? Having said that, CDs do have their upsides. As I mentioned earlier, you can make them on your own. They're very cheap and very fast to make. For a label such as myself, it's really simple to make CDs. You know, like Nelson Slater, the man from Cincinnati, Ohio, Lou Reed's roommate back in the early 60s and still at it. I can't afford to press vinyl on a Nelson Slater album, but I can make a CD. That's kind of cool. You got to admit it. When a band like King Gizzard and the Lizard Wizard announces that they're making an album available that anybody can release, well, of course I'm going to jump on it and make as many formats as I can, such as CD, in addition to cassette, hand-lathed records, reel-to-reel tapes, 8 tracks, God knows what else. But a CD is a viable format. My band Ultra Bunny, you know, we record every single concert we play because it's all improv, and the CD along with the cassette is a perfect format for releasing them because I've got literally dozens of live Ultra Bunny CDs and cassettes. To try to do it on vinyl, not practical. I'd be out thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars. CDs and cassettes, easy. And I got to admit, too, that once I got a vehicle that had a CD player in it 7 years ago, which was right around the time that you started seeing the CDs in the thrift stores for $1 each. Well, all right. You know, my motto has always been, cheap is real. And so the reason that I'm able to listen to lots of music is because I've got a car that's got a CD player in it, and CDs can now be had for $1 each at the thrift shop. Well, all right. CDs have finally reached their own level of incompetence. The balance has finally been achieved between quality and price. We got it, kids. We got it. I'll pay $1 for Black Sabbath on CD. You better believe it. Hell yeah. Do it all the time. That's fun. Yeah. Anyway, I'm going to talk about some of my favorite CDs right now and why they're some of my favorite CDs. When we had the very first ever devotional fan gathering of Devo fans in Cleveland, Ohio in 1999, and it's still an event, still happening. I don't know when the next one is, but it's still happening. We have bands play every year, and at the very first one, this group hit the stage. They blew me away. They were great. They were quirky. They were funny. They were tight. They had good presentation, and they were called CD Truth. I don't think CD Truth ever played outside of the Akron, Cleveland, Kent, Cuyahoga Falls vicinity. But man, they were good. They were real good. And so after their set, I went back to the merch table and said, "1 CD Truth CD, please." And I paid him the money. And I've been playing this thing ever since. And this illustrates why physical media is so important. Because this reminds me of another story. There was a band I went to go see, I guess around 2009, 2010. And they were called Neon Leather Drip. And they played up in Boston, and they were playing with this group, the Chinese Stars, which is an Arab on Radar offshoot. Great band. And Neon Leather Drip opened. They played. I thought they were really good. I liked them. So when they were done with their set, I went back to the merch table and said, "Hey, what you got? You got records? You got CDs?" They said, "No, we have." Let's see if I have a prop here that I can use. Hold on a sec. Got to grab the props. Got to grab the props. Props are very important when telling a story like this. Got to be able to see the props. Ah, here we go. Do we have CDs or vinyl or cassettes? No, we have download cards. They whip out a stack of cards. Like a download card? Yeah, $10, and you can download our album. And I said, "Wait, I'm going to give you a $10 bill, and in exchange, you're going to give me a business card, and then I have to go home and do all the work? Sorry, Neon Leather Drip, maybe next time." Or you know what? Maybe not. And to this day, over 10 years later, I still have not heard a note of Neon Leather Drip's music. I don't remember what they sounded like. They've been forgotten to the mists of time. The only time I ever think of them is when I tell that story. Whereas CD Truth, I got it. I got the physical artifact. I've got the reminder. It sits in my library in the next room. And whenever I go through my discs looking for something to play, I see this, and I'm reminded of how good these guys were as a band and how cool they were as individuals and how much I love this album. Physical artifacts, kids. Physical media. And I think time is showing it's not just old codgers like myself. It's anybody who actually wants to appreciate the tactile experience of music and art. Digital does not replace it. A salute to CD Truth for doing it right. Now, my ranting and raving and railing and raging against CDs in the extremely cynical way in which they were foisted upon the American public does not change the fact that because CDs are smaller, compact, if you will, you could do a lot more with the packaging on a smaller budget. And that really fit well into the modus operandus of certain bands like The Residents. By the way, I am a resident. Look it up. I am a resident. Look it up. But don't tell anybody I said so. The Residents. You know, the Residents pretty much exist on the goodwill of their rabid hardcore fans, and they know how to cater to said rabid hardcore fans. For a long time in the 90s, they had a direct-to-mail company. I've actually had a few over the years, but a really active one was called UWeb, and they would do these amazing mail-order-only CD packages. Like this thing, The Demons Dance Alone. You know, it's got the outer slipcase, hardbound book, you know, with lots of pages. It's got 1, 2 discs in it. It's like super, oh boy, there goes part of it. Super ultra deluxe packaging. It's literally not possible to make something like this on a limited budget on vinyl. I mean, you can't. A lot of bands are doing it now. I think the Residents nowadays are even doing it. But at the time, this was the way to go. It was way easy to make an amazing package like this. Hand numbered, every single one of them. Hand numbered with, you know, tracks you couldn't get anywhere else, deluxe bonus content. I mean, for a CD, that's pretty cool. And they certainly hooked me. They really got their hooks in me. I got a whole bunch of these Residents limited edition discs because each one is really seriously a work of art. And you can't get it anywhere else. Kind of fun, kind of funny. One of my arguments for the longest time about the superiority of vinyl over CD was that there were and still are an almost infinite number of albums, singles, what have you, that were released on vinyl that would never, ever, ever get reissued on CD. Of course, that was a much bigger issue back then when the major labels and the labels themselves controlled the entire supply when it came to CDs. Not so much of an issue now, but at the time, it was definitely a big deal. That, here's a good example right now. I was on one of the 10cc fan groups recently, and I brought up the topic of the Fur album. If this thing ever gets reissued on CD, I will personally bake a whole wheat bread hat and eat it. Having said that, I'm sure that somebody on the internet research team right now is looking this thing up on Discogs and is going to post a link to the CD reissue of it. That's why I make all of my hats out of whole wheat bread. Anyway, that was the argument. The argument has now, of course, as all things do, come full circle. There's an entire universe of titles that were only released on CD that, who knows, will probably never, ever, ever be reissued on vinyl. And it's a lot of fun to track these things down and winnow them out from the thrift shops and whatever. And there's some wacky stuff out there. There was a real golden era, a real sweet spot in time when CD manufacturing costs balanced out for the little guy and people were able to make some really amazing stuff on CD. And I don't know, do you think anybody's ever going to reissue the Hulk Hogan album on vinyl? Has it been done? Will it be done? I don't know. What label was it on? It was on the Hulk's own label, I think. Select Records. Never heard of it. But gosh dang, this is so much a product of its time. And the demand for this thing has got to be absolutely minimal. I cannot imagine this being reissued on vinyl. And if it were to be reissued on vinyl, it would probably have a $32.99 list price. Does that remind anybody of the CD reissue campaigns of the 90s? Yes, it will probably, if it ever does get reissued on vinyl, be at an exorbitantly expensive price, far beyond the cost of the manufacturer. See, nothing ever changes. I doubt it. But to find it for a buck at the thrift shop, that's cool. That's real cool. The Hulk's all-time nemesis, Randy Macho Man Savage, he had to put out an album too. Autograph, no less. I really can't imagine this being issued on vinyl. I just don't see it happening. And I'll qualify that, I don't see it happening at an affordable price. How's that? The dollar thrift shop CD now, in my book, completely trumps the $35 reissue LP. The situation is completely flip-flopped. It used to be the dollar album that would trump the $29.99 CD reissue. Now it's the dollar CD beating the $35 LP reissue. I'd still rather hear it on album, but let's face it, you got to go where the cheap action is. And these are very much products of their individual and unique times. I love these things. They are genuine artifacts. One thing that was always very easy to do on CDs, which is a little bit less easy to do on vinyl, although it's certainly become a thing now on vinyl, but once again at ridiculously exorbitant prices, is the Deluxe Boxed Set. And for a while, the only way you could get certain material was in the CD boxed set. And there's some really strange esoteric stuff that's only ever come out officially on these bizarre arcane CD box sets. And you know, once again, stand on my skull and call me shorty, it does not rule out the possibility of a deluxe vinyl reissue of some of these things. But again, at what price? And really, what are the odds? It's one of my favorite examples. A boxed set entitled Final VU, 1971 to 1973. This is a 4 CD boxed set that only came out in Japan on the Captain Trips label, or Captain Trip label, of post Lou Reed Velvet Underground live recordings. How arcane can you possibly get? It's legit. It was issued under license from Doug Yule in the Doug Yule archives. If y'all know your Velvet Underground history, Doug Yule is the guy who took over the band after Lou Reed quit, and actually soldiered on for a few years after Lou Reed. Recorded and released an album called Squeeze, which even Doug Yule himself kind of condemns with faint praise. And they were bootlegged a few times. 1971, 1972, and 1973. And this 4 CD box set contains all of the known live recordings of that version of the Velvet Underground. And it's just really neat because the LP version of this would probably be an 8-album boxed set, which right off the bat would be damned expensive. I picked this up for 25 bucks, used, at a record store in Baltimore a few years back. And it's definitely kind of a hard listen because the recording quality is fair to middling at best. But if you're a total nut job like myself, obsessed with all things Velvet Underground, you gotta have it. And the price was certainly right. And this is what you can do with a CD, you know? Nice box. Holds 4 discs with my handwritten notes tucked into each jewel box, because I'm that kind of a guy. Each CD is packaged. Let's see if I can get one out here to show you guys. Here you go. Each CD's got its own packaging and professionally made silver discs. It's just kind of cool. It shows you what the medium was capable of and what could be done that really wasn't possible to do on vinyl, and to this day still isn't at an affordable price able to do on vinyl. And God, this brings out the geek in me. It brings out the geek in me. Oy. Post Lou Reed Velvet Underground shitty quality recordings in a CD box set. Man, you gotta love it. Oh, I forgot to mention too, booklet. Booklet. You can get very literate with the CD era. There's always a booklet involved. Love them booklets. Booklets are great. I got one more for you. When you talk about the possibilities of complete and utter overkill in the CD realm, and I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to bake myself another whole wheat hat. I'm going to fire up the oven, get out the flour, the yeast, maybe put some oats or whatnot in it, and make a nice big hat out of whole wheat bread and put it on, just in case I have to eat my hat again. If anybody comes out with a vinyl version of the 28 CD boxed set of Sun Ra and the Omniverse Jet Set Orchestra, I will eat that hat. I will do it. 28 CDs, my God. We're talking about at least a 50, that's 50, as in 49, 50, 51, 50 CD, 50 LP box set to contain all of the material that's on this 28 disc set. Oh my God. Look at this thing. Look at that. And this gets back to what I was talking about earlier, the great Equalizer. This came out on a label, it's not around anymore. The label's called Transparency. And Transparency's specialty was CDRs and DVD-Rs of the Sun Ra Orchestra. And there was, I don't know exactly what the deal was. What I read somewhere was that the people from Transparency had an agreement with Marshall Allen, who has been the conductor of the Sun Ra Orchestra for about 25-ish years now. From what I read, Marshall Allen said that Transparency had a moral right to release stuff by Sun Ra, provided that the current orchestra got a royalty. And so the people at Transparency, you know, they got the moral right from Marshall Allen himself. They took that ball and they ran with it. They ground out tons of these things. And the reason they were able to do it was because on CDR, you could make them with a tower, a manufacturing tower. You could run them off 10 at a time, or maybe even more. You could actually buy a CD duplication tower for a couple few $100, and you could run them off 10 at a time, like at 48x. You could have 10 CDs made in about a minute. So to do a 28 CD box set in an edition of, how many do they make of this? 400, same deal, hand numbered, edition of 400. It was actually possible to do it. And that's one reason why my grudge against CDs abated somewhat. Abated just a little bit. Once the manufacturing got into the hands of the people, and the people were no longer slaves to the major label pricing structure, it was more of a fair game. It was much more fair play. And so the people at Transparency actually could do something like a 28 CD set of just one Sun Ra residency. This is the documentation of a little over a week in Detroit. 28 CDs. That's power to the people, baby. That is populism. Transparency is no longer in business, or if they are, they've kept a very, very low profile for a few years because the Sun Ra estate is now managed by other people who are a little bit more discriminating about what they put out. Because as much as I love the concept of what Transparency was doing, we got to admit they put out some shitty fucking stuff. Do you hear the foul language I just used? That's how bad some of the Transparency releases are. They're crap. So the current administrators of the Sun Ra estate have a much, much higher standard of quality with what they release. But you got to admit, when Transparency got it right, they got it right. 28 CDs, not really possible on vinyl, and kind of a further stretch on cassette. You can just put them right in this case and DIY, baby. DIY. So that's a large reason why I put up with CDs a lot more now. The price has gone down. It's more populist. And vinyl, of course, never went away. So now it's kind of more of a fair game for everybody. Everybody can have it the way they want. If you want your vinyl, you get your vinyl. You want your CDs, you can have your CDs. If you want to pay $1 for them at the thrift shop, even better. A guy like me can release them. My band, They Hate Us. It is possible for our friends at Mystery School Records in Wilmington, North Carolina, to make an actual shrink-wrapped, printed digipack CD at a reasonable price and release one of my band's music. Release one of my band's music. Release one of my band's musics. Ms. Gelman, if you're tuned in, please tell me how to properly word that sentence. I appreciate it. I think that's about it for today. As always, I want to thank everybody for tuning in and listening to me rant and ramble. I will be, as always, checking out your comments later and keeping the conversation flowing because I love to hear from all you guys. You guys are the best. You're why I do it. As usual, I invite you to check out my YouTube channel, Malcolm 10. That's me. Look me up. Subscribe. If you're going to subscribe, also go to the Anti-Scene Official YouTube channel. I curate it. I'm the guy who puts it together. Stroke my ego. Subscribe to the Anti-Scene page. Let me know I'm doing a good job. And keep your eyes open for more Tent Talks tunes. I'm just going to say I've got a few interviews coming up. As I speak these words, it's the end of February 2021. I've got a couple of interviews coming up with John Howard, who used to be a member of the great band Freak Baby in Danbury in the early 90s, and also an employee of Trash American Style. I've got a couple hours of interviews with him. I also have a few hours of interviews with a guy named Bob Lewis. Bob Lewis was the co-founder and co-conceptor of a little group called Devo. And he very happily sat in the hot seat and let me pick his brain for a few hours. So those interviews are going to be running. And of course, every Wednesday live at 7 p.m. right here on Facebook, Tent Talks Tunes. So, and I just had a request for someone to show them the back of the hoodie. What the hell is on the back of the hoodie? What's on this? Anything? I can't see it. Nick Stone, you got to tell me something. What's on the back of this hoodie? I don't know. Or did you mean, wait a minute, did Nick Stone mean the back of the hoodie? As in the back of the hoodie? Yeah, there you go. The green monster. This is by request, folks. Strictly by request. So I did it. In fact, since we're still here, we're still live, how about if I reach over and see if there's anything else I need to address from all you people? Oh, wow, we got a lively conversation going on, which I can't really see because you're in live time and I can't check the whole thing out while it's happening. Oh, man, lots of you guys tuned in. Glad to see you. All right, I'm going to stop yapping. Let you guys get right down to it. I hope you enjoyed this episode of Tent Talks Tunes. I do plan, Lord willing and the creeks don't rise, to be back in about 167 hours. So until we meet again, this is Malcolm Tent saying so long from the Nutmeg State.